Hello. Welcome to the webinar. Today I'm doing a webinar on the unique position of the food creative. I do this because I celebrate the third Food and Design Dive, which is my live online course, which will start on September 28th, which I will be talking more about at the end of this webinar. So if you're interested in that, just stay watching, and if you're not, then that's completely fine. Just take whatever you like to take from this webinar, because today I am going to talk about how you can make your first steps in food and design. The thing is that I used to travel around the world a lot, and I met a lot of young people who tell me, I love the idea of working with food in a creative way because I can see that I can bring so much value to the world, but how do I start? So sometimes these are designers, these people are young designers who see the value in bringing food to their palette of work. Sometimes these are people working in food but do not have the design skills to actually be able to take their food skills to the next level in a creative way. Well, even though I don't really travel right now, I still get a lot of these kind of emails of people who just want to know, how do I start? And even if you are already working in the mix between food and design, in this webinar, I will be giving you some tricks, some tools, and some insights in how to amplify your practice. The thing is that when we think about food and creativity, and my course is called Food and Design because I'm a designer, have been working with food and design now for over 20 years. So design for me makes a lot of sense. But I'm talking today about food creatives because I also see that design in itself is kind of is kind of misinterpreted by many people. Many people think that to be able to be a designer or to design something, you need to have design education. And other people think that design in itself is just making beautiful objects and beautiful shapes. And actually nature did already a good job here. Humans did some as well. But eventually, I think design in essence is about so much more than only giving shape and color to something. It's really about bringing to life creative ideas. So it's about making tangible a different way of thinking or bringing a different perspective to something that you think you already know, like food, and then completely shifting perspective so you engage with the topic food in a very different way. And for me, that is what design can do. And sometimes this is just a beautiful shape and it does give you actually a new perspective. But sometimes it's also just a different way of using food as a communicator between different people. Or sometimes it's about exploring your senses through food in a different way. So you engage with your senses in a different way. So I think it's very important that we understand that I see design as something much broader than only giving shape. But because of that and because of this confusion around the word design, today I'm talking about food creatives, because I think this is a kind of more accessible way to think about food through the creative lens. And that's the cool thing. And of all the topics in the world, food is a topic that everybody understands. Everybody eats. Everybody can have the sensation of eating. Everybody has knowledge about eating. And it doesn't have to be scientific knowledge. It doesn't have to be extensive knowledge. But everybody knows how it feels to actually eat something, to bite into something, to understand different textures, different shapes, different flavors. Everybody has a link to food. People don't all have to love food, but they do understand that food is something in their life. And I think this, in essence, is what makes food such an interesting topic to work on from a creative angle. Well, food and creativity is something that seems to me very logical to put together, but I can see in the world that it's not actually that logical at all. That many people see that food is a commodity, or food is something that we just need as a fuel. And then sometimes you see people who are more linked to the idea that food is also a ritual, food also has a cultural connotation, food is politics, food is landscape, food is science, food is our income and economy. Food is actually just linked to everything in the world. And this, I think, is a beautiful thing, but it can also be kind of overwhelming. And to then connect creativity to all these topics that you can imagine when you think about food, it becomes kind of blurry for many people, which is understandable because there are not too many examples yet where food and creativity is brought together, which is something, in my opinion, something quite amazing as well, because it just means that there is a huge gap, that there is a huge opening to actually step into and start working with food from a creative perspective. So now you might think, well, why would the world of food need creative people? Why would it need creativity? You silly woman. Well, I think we can agree when we do look at the world of food that there are a lot of issues going on. Many of the biggest issues with food, or the biggest issues in the world, are related to food, like climate change, like pollinator decline, like obesity, empty oceans, plastic pollution anyway, monocultures. There is this kind of endless and very sad list of things that are happening in the world right now that are connected to our food consumption. I am not saying that creative people who just jump into those issues will solve everything, but I do think that many of the issues that we see nowadays are there because they're created through systems that had been working for single purposes. And many of these systems have never been questioned. And I think one of the beautiful things of creative people is that they have the ability to be the outsider, to work together with specialists and to question things, to tilt perspective, to look from the bottom up to things, or perhaps from the top or from the side, to shake things around, and then to find new ways to deal with things. And maybe these are just small things. I'm not saying that everybody who works with food needs to tackle these big issues. You can also just work with food to make people connect between each other. You can also work with food to help people who deal with loneliness. You can also work with food to make people a little bit more healthy or a little bit more connected to the earth where the food was growing. So there's so many ways to start working with food that might not feel as if you are suddenly solving big issues in the world. But I do think if more and more people start to understand the power of creative thinking and apply that to this thing that they put in their mouth every day, all little steps together will start to make a big movement. And I think this is what excites me about the potential of creativity combined with food. So if you're watching this and if you're wondering, how do I make these steps? How can I get engaged with that? How do I suddenly change my business or my work life from working with objects or graphic design or textiles or wherever you are, or from food to a more creative way of working with food, how do you make those first steps? And I think many times when people see examples of amazing designs with food, people get excited, but then they actually don't see how to get themselves in there. And it is actually a shame to feel overwhelmed, to feel, wow, this is so much and I just know so little about the topics. How do I actually, how would I ever get myself to become a part of that? And I think the cool thing is with food, everybody is already a part of that, because we all eat every day, about 3-4 times a day perhaps. You are engaging with food, and this is your first opportunity to start to change that. So if you feel you want to create a food and design business, the first thing to do is just to think differently in the next bite you take. Perhaps you have a little conversation with your food. Perhaps you just start to think about where that food came from. So the process of creating designs with food is quite similar. So if you're already working as a creative, I think this is very important to see. The process of creating or designing a chair, for example, is very similar to working with food. Perhaps you don't have to do all these things yourself. You don't have to know how plastic works or how to make a mass production mold yourself. You can start to collaborate with other people, and this is exactly the same within food. And I think within food it's so cool because there are so many specialists in food. There's so many people who know exactly how to produce the most highest quality milk from cows, for example. And then other people know exactly how to get the best seeds who are fungi resistant and who sprout easily, for example. And then other people know exactly how to do food branding and how to make, how to seduce people to eat this food that they want to brand. So food, the world of food is full of specialists. And I think this is quite amazing because this means, and remember this because I think it's really important, this means that when you want to start working with food, you don't have to know everything yourself. Of course, you can do research and you can get into it, and I would definitely suggest you to do that. But you don't have to wait until you know everything before you start. I think the best thing is to actually go and start collaborating with specialists, because specialists, they can tell you amazing stories that you never knew about before, and that can inspire you to start making new projects. So try to connect with specialists and see that a specialist can only be a specialist if they focus on what they do. But this also means that the food chain is full of people who are focused and doing their job, but because they are specialists, they do not always have the possibility to look outside of their specialism, and they hardly ever really connect with other people in that food chain to start to cross-pollinate. And I think the role of a food creative can be to move in between all these specialists and to start to connect people who would normally never see each other together in unconventional ways. So what would happen if you would connect a food politician to a poultry farmer, for example, and start to see where you can merge these fields and where you can radically shift perspective? So when you start with food and design, or when you start with food from a creative perspective, be aware that you do not have to know everything about the food. You can work with chefs. Chefs are amazing people who know so much about all the produce and about this beautiful, magical chemical process of cooking. You can work with them together and see how you can use their knowledge to enhance your project. So that's the first thing. The second thing is start small. You don't have to know everything, but you don't have to do everything. You can actually just start with making something at your next dinner. You don't have to instantly launch a business in food and design. You can actually just start with your practice. So if you would start working out, for example, you don't instantly start your workout business. You just start to do some push-ups or whatever you want to do. And that's the same with food and design. And the cool thing is that you are already engaging with food a couple of times a day. So why not every time you eat, or perhaps every dinner, you just think differently about that food. You just look at that plate and then start to wonder, do we actually need a plate? And this is food for myself, but who else am I cooking for? And how can I address them in different ways? So you can already start today just by making small changes. And you don't have to, when you start, you don't have to think about, now I have to save the oceans, or now I have to make huge projects. Just do small things that tell you, that give you feedback, that tell you whether whatever you did is useful or not. And if it's not, then that's great, because then you know that, and then you can do something else again and something else again. So every dinner becomes a tiny little trial that helps you to understand the mechanisms behind food. It helps you to understand more about the psychology of food. It helps you to understand more about the rituals around food, the culture around food, the chemical process of food. It helps you to understand about food and aesthetics, food and presentation. It helps you to understand about communication and food. So already just starting small, starting with your daily dinner, for example, or your breakfast, can give you little sparks to make the next steps. And I think this is so important. Many times we just want to make a huge leap and then say, yes, this is what I want to do. But before you want to make the leap, you think, do I really want to do that? Maybe I need to wait. Maybe it's better to wait to get that job so I have a little bit of money. And then when I have money, then I can do something with food. Or maybe I should first do a full course on dietitian nutrition, and then I can start to work with food. Or maybe I need to wait until my kids grow up, and then I can do something with food. Or maybe I can, the maybes. Why do you have the maybes? Because you are already dealing with food. So try not to be paralyzed by this idea of having to make a big step, but just start today in small and have fun with it. Just play with it. Just mess around with your food, just to have this experience. And then when you have fun with it, then you can do the next thing. And then you can do the next thing. And before you know it, you actually create a dinner for more people than just your own family. And at this dinner, you ask your friends to invite some new people you didn't know before. And these new people, they love what you did. And then they give you an assignment. And then you do this assignment and they invite people. And there's 2 other people that love it and give you another assignment. And that's how you actually get things started. So all you need to do is to not think about all these huge things, but to just think about your next dinner. And how are you going to make that a special experience, maybe even just for yourself. But if you realize during a year how many dinners you make and how many breakfasts and how many lunches and how many opportunities you have to make little small changes to actually learn and learn and learn and change and shape and understand, wow, then within 1 year you already have a huge body of work just by doing small things. So don't feel paralyzed about how you should do your business or how it would make you money. Just go and start do it. That is really the first step. And it's really the only step to think about if you're still wondering whether you want to actually work eventually in the field of food and creativity. The next thing is, because there's so many opportunities. Like I said in the beginning, you could work with fishing, you could work with apples, you could work with food and psychology, you could work with food and healthcare or body care. You can work with farmers, landscapes, you can work with waste, pollution. There is so much. And don't forget the whole hospitality industry and event catering. There is so much you can do with food and creativity that I can understand it feels overwhelming and exciting and that you just want to do everything. What I would suggest for you to do is to start thinking to yourself, like, what really excites me? Am I just as excited about food waste as I am excited about making rituals for people around food so they feel more connected with food? Am I just as excited about working with food and science with this scientist that I know as I am about working with food and agriculture, for example? So check with yourself, what is your personal fascination? Because you don't need to do it all. You can just focus on what you enjoy doing and make that exactly what you want to do. The thing is that the world of food and design is so empty. There is so much opportunity and there's so much space for people to do things that especially people who do what they love to do and find their space there, just do that. Just find your unique position within creativity and food and do this thing that actually excites you instead of feeling that you either need to do everything or feeling that you need to do something urgent because you've heard that it's important to work with pollution. But if you do not feel excited about that, then perhaps you can just do something else. Because eventually the world is full of people who are going to work with food in the future. So all together, people will make this difference. And you can just be one little link in this complete thing. So don't feel overwhelmed and try to figure out what excites you. And if you are not sure about that, you can do a little exercise, which is quite nice. Just go and take some paper or a journal and start writing down what if. What if ... So it could be, what if I would be working with food and healthcare? And then start writing about how would that be? How would that make you feel? What kind of things would you think of doing? And try not to think about the practicalities of that. Try not to think about, yeah, but how would I then have to do all these things? No, that's not for now. You just want to figure out, you just want to use your compass and see which direction you want to go. And once you know that direction, you might not know how to take the next steps. But the cool thing is, if you just know what your direction is, if you know that that's the focus, and you just start today. Like I said, you can start very small, just making things, creative things. Start expanding it a little bit in your family and then with friends, and see, how you feel like expanding that. Then eventually you will always find your path towards this place where you want to go, towards this specific thing where you have set your compass to. So try not to get caught up in thinking about, but then how do I do that? No, just think, what if, or wouldn't it be cool if I would start to work with baking cakes with naked people? Yeah. I don't know if that excites you. Then just try to imagine it. Try to imagine it as vividly as you can, and just enjoy the experience of imagining it. Because when you use your imagination, when you really envision that this thing that you would like to do is already happening, what you did is actually opening the pathway from here to this potential future. And then stepping into that becomes so much easier. And actually, if you think back into your life, you know that you already did that in the past. You know that there are things you are living right now, experience that you're having right now, that you used to dream of. And now you are actually living that. And that's the same thing with this. All you need to do is to think, what if? And then your inner compass will tell you, I really like this. And then you can focus on that. So you don't need to do everything in food and design. The food and design dive covers lots and lots of topics. But this is really to actually help you to see the bandwidth and to help you to do lots of exercises to finally find which direction you like, and to know that all these other things are also there. So you can actually start to collaborate if you like to. The last thing that I want to share with you, which I think is so important, is that, and this is not only with food and design, this is just in general with any creative practice. Many of us have it's funny, many of us have an inner judge. And this inner judge is not always so nice. And it's interesting, like, why is our inner judge many times so much more nice to other people, but not really to us? Do you recognize this tiny inner voice that says, well, you did that, but it's really quite ugly, and I don't think you will ever do that, and you probably won't make it. This is stupid. This is ridiculous. Try to do your work in little steps without forcing yourself to have to be more, to have to be bigger, or to have to be further than you are. Just enjoy whatever you are making and see that everything is a practice. So if you would, if you would go and do workouts, if you would start doing workouts and you would do a few push-ups, you don't expect yourself to do 50 push-ups the first time you do it, right? It's just a practice. It's just something that you do, and you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. And being a judge or a self-critic is really very unproductive. So start becoming aware of whenever you judge yourself or your work, and see that judgment in itself is very uncreative. Because the moment you have an opinion about something, The moment you say this is wrong and that's right, or, this is useless, this is rubbish. The moment you have an opinion about something, what you do is you actually cut away a large part of possible, potential, creative ideas. And the moment you actually start to embrace whatever you would normally dismiss as bad, you might actually end up finding more interesting ideas. So whenever you see or feel this inner critic starting to raise his or her flag, saying, hey, this is stupid, then you might say, interesting. Stupid can be very creative. Making something ugly can be very interesting. And the moment you see criticism as something that is just merely interesting, perhaps you could be inspiring me. Hello, critic, please tell me something, because I can use some inspiration. If you start to see your inner critic like that, that can be very powerful, because now you can feel free to just create, to just make, and to see that everything is just part of a process, that nothing needs to be perfect instantly. Perfection is the death of creativity. So if you want to think of yourself as a creative person, then you can let go of your perfectionism. Things do not need to be perfect. And that is actually what I like so much about working with food, is that when you work with food, everything is ephemeral. So things will disintegrate. They will disintegrate in your body and create beautiful shit. Shit is beautiful manure that can actually grow food again. Or they will disintegrate out of your body and they will be eaten by microbes, which is amazing. So be relaxed with it. That's the cool thing. You can actually relax working with food. It doesn't need to be perfect straight away. And every little thing you do, especially if you do the daily dinner, creative, making something new thing, you can just let go of this huge rock of concrete on top of you that makes you the perfectionist, because it does not serve you. Eventually, when you train and when you start to become more professional, when you start to collaborate with more professional people, then you can make more professional work. But it's a natural process. So don't be hard on yourself. Just start to do it and do not judge. And the judging thing doesn't only count for judging yourself or judging what you have created, but also judging the food system. The food system is there. It's very complex. And I think the food system is being criticized far more than it probably should. I think finding nuance in processes in the food system has proven for me to be much more inspiring than already saying this is wrong and that is right. Because the moment you start judging, you are dismissing so much and you're really putting a little frame around your creative mind. So the judgment thing counts for yourself, but also for everybody and everything you are engaging with in the food system. Eventually, when you would embrace also everything that you would find negative about the food system, and if you would start to make creations that could be considered as dark or black, before this goes out in the world, you will have your inner compass that tells you how to deal with that. But artistically, I think it's very important to always embrace that, because sometimes the most beautiful solutions that are positive solutions actually come from embracing something that people do not dare to touch. And I really, really appreciate that and respect that. So I hope that these small suggestions that might seem very irrelevant or really small. I hope that these actually can help you, because what I want to say in essence is that working with food is the most accessible material in the world. Starting a creative business with food might seem very overwhelming, but once you start small, focus on what you really like doing, finding your fascination, and then just making lots of training and lots of work, then eventually growing your business becomes easier and easier. And I think that is the cool thing about working with food in a creative way. So I'll name them again for you. First, it's the same creative process as creating something which is non-edible. So you can use the same creative steps. Second, start small. So start with your daily food. The third thing is you don't need to know everything. You can just work with specialists, and I would definitely suggest you to find specialists to work with, because it's so much fun. They have such amazing knowledge that you could never have anyway, unless you would become a specialist as well. So start working with specialists and know that you do not have to know everything right now. The only thing that you need to know is how to change perspective. The fourth thing is focus on your fascination. You do not have to take on all the subjects that food and design offer. It's quite cool that all these subjects are there. It's very cool that there's still lots and lots of space within food and design to step into and to actually create your business with. And the fifth one is do not judge. Do not judge yourself. Do not judge the food system. Just embrace the ideas and see opportunities. So why not start today with writing down what if, or wouldn't it be cool if I would do, I don't know, I would start to work with food and chefs, if I would start to work with farmers, if I would start to work in a creative way with healthcare, for example. So start to make that list, and you will know, because your inner compass is right here. You know then what to do. You know which path is your path. And why not start today with the next food you're going to eat and see if you can see it in a different way. If you can start to engage with your food in a different way. If you can perhaps share it with someone you didn't share it with before. If you are interested in these kind of things, and if you like this idea of taking simple steps to actually amaze yourself with whatever you can create out of that, or if you want to develop your practice in creative thinking, then I do invite you to have a look at the Food and Design Dive, which is my live online course. We will be starting in September the 29th. It is a 10 weeks online course. Every week we will do a live session, so we'll be seeing each other on Zoom. I will also be answering questions, and it's very nice. It's a very interactive way of communicating with each other. I will have classes with lots of images, with lots of examples of great food and design practices, and we will talk about different topics every week. Next to that, you will get a weekly challenge of things to do at home or wherever you are, to work with food, to develop your skills. And this weekly homework you will be posting in our group so we can all see it and we can all comment on it. And I will personally comment on all the things that you have done. So we will have a communication system going on there. Of course, there are many bonuses in this course. This is the third one I'm doing. I did 2 successful food and design dives already, and I'm actually so happy and appreciative of all the results that we already have from the first 2 of the students who have been developing their work, who have been finding their passions, who have been just amplifying their businesses within food and design. Many of those students were not designers. Many of these students were either chefs, some were caterers, some had their own businesses in food or in food education, gastronomy. And also we had a lot of students who wanted to do this on top of their studies. So it's a very broad group of people, and that's very cool because it's a worldwide group of people. So what we get every time we do one of those food and design dives is we get this amazing peer group of people who also network together. So eventually you can expect to be part of this group who also continues communicating after the dive is already done. So this is a kind of added thing that you are not alone. You are together with like-minded people who all have amazing stories to bring into this group, which also excite me a lot. I have so much fun doing these things together. Next to that, there's another bonus, which is that every food and design dive, one person can win a personal coaching project of 2 hours. So we're going to dive deeper in your personal development. So that's a little surprise. And we have some bonus sessions on creative strategies, because I see that food and design itself, as every design practice, is an amazing practice, but hardly anybody really looks at what is underneath. Who are the people? Who is the person that is actually the creative person? And how do you deal with things like stress, with things like deadlines? How do you deal with procrastination? How do you deal with self-criticism? How do you deal with finding inspiration and flow and time to work? So all these things, this kind of underlying practice of creative strategies are part of the food and design dive. This is a free access to my other online group, which is the Creative Strategies for Sensitive Pirates group. And there it's very cool to see how people move their lives from feeling overwhelmed, from feeling stress, from feeling like a creative block, from feeling pushed to perform without actually having the time and the space to play, having the time and the space to develop themselves or to experiment with things. And the cool thing is that many of those kind of issues are quite easily solved. You just need to know what to do, and you just need a little bit of guidance in that. And so it's quite cool for me to see how people have been moved, how people have moved their lives from this to haha. I guess that says it all. So it's nice to know that it just works, and this is something that you get free as a part of the Food and Design Dive. So this is all I wanted to share with you today. I can imagine that you do have questions after this. Just send your questions to me. I'm happy to answer them. You can do that on Facebook or Instagram, but you can also send them to me via email. When you see this video, then you also see the link to my email, but I'll just let you know it's studio@MarijeVogelzang.NL. So I'm happy to see if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer them. And I hope that this webinar was useful for you. Don't hesitate to make your first steps. It's quite cool that right now food and design is still an emerging field. There's lots and lots to explore. There's lots of your opportunity to make money in this field. And the cool thing is, whenever you bring more creativity into our daily eating experience, then you just add to a more beautiful world, to a bigger sensitivity to our senses, to food as a sensorial experience, and to how we as humans connect with each other and how we connect to our land and to the world. So if this excites you as much as it excites me, then I'm happy to see more of you. Bye.